There are certain practices that you can stop or start doing in your life to help you increase the amount of times that you access the creative high. I came to the conclusion that your environment actually plays a crucial and very important role in influencing the levels of creativity in your life. I think the best thing that I ever did for my creative growth is to surround myself with people who take their own very seriously and allow your brain time to slowly connect those ideas in the background, and I promise it will eventually resurface as a creative hunch for you to work with. I don't know who needs to hear this, but times have changed. In the current world, it's no longer about what you know and what you have, but what you can do with what you have that truly sets you apart from the rest. Which is to say that we have evolved from a world that constantly needs resources to keep it alive and into a world that needs ideas to keep it evolving and moving forward. And when you think about it that way, you realize that taking some time to hone and nurture your creative thinking skills is one of the most crucial investments that you can make with your time. Becoming more creative is a kind of practice that allows you to consistently come up with the kind of ideas that will keep you indispensable for the rest of your life. I've talked a lot about the power and the importance of creativity in your life on this channel already. So today, let's take a look at how exactly we can become more creative people so that you can reap these fruits of creativity that I just won't shut up about. Let's get right into it. Before we get into the actual video and the nitty-gritty of it, I want to give 3 sort of disclaimers just to help prime your mindset for the video ahead of you and to give you a better understanding overall of what to expect from it. Disclaimer number 1 is that everyone is a creative. I truly believe that each individual I truly believe that each individual possesses the capability to be a creative genius, yourself included. So as we go through the video, don't assume that creativity is a skill that you have to acquire like French or learning how to garden. Creativity is a gift that is already within you that we're going to learn how to cultivate and let out more often. It's not just reserved for the Picassos and the Mozarts and the Beethovens of the world, which leads us to our second disclaimer. Creativity goes beyond just artistic practices, which seems like common sense, but I know on this channel I talk a lot about creativity in relation to artistry because I'm an artist myself. Art is the most common place that I personally interact with creativity, but creativity is simply the process of bringing new ideas to life. So entrepreneurship, mathematical problem solving, scientific experiments, you name it. These are all practices that involve and utilize the creative process. So while you might not necessarily consider yourself an artist, you are most definitely a creative. And so the information that I provide on this video and largely on this channel is most definitely for you as well. Disclaimer number 3 is that there is no one-size-fits-all formula to becoming a more creative person. Creativity is way too complex and way too individualized a process for there to be a one step-by-step formula to accessing it. However, there are certain practices that you can stop or start doing in your life to help you increase the amount of times that you access the creative high and get more creative ideas. It is a realization that I came to in my own life, and so I started taking more conscious notice of these practices that I did. And after a while of consistently taking mental notes and refiguring and moving everything about in my life, I came to the conclusion that your environment actually plays a crucial and very important role in influencing the levels of creativity in your life. And it is 3 specific aspects of your environment that stand out as the make or break factors of your creativity. That is your mental environment, your physical environment, and your social environment. Now, of course, there's a lot of other factors that influence your creativity, but in this video, I'm going to specifically focus on showing you how to curate the 3 of these to make sure that they not only accommodate but serve and nurture your creativity instead of diminishing it, so that you can set yourself up to unleash that creative genius that I know is somewhere inside of you. Let's get into it. Before we deal with the external, we must first deal with the internal. Let's talk about your mental environment. Your mental environment refers to what you let into and what predominantly stays in your mind. Now, when I say this, the next thing that you automatically assume I'm going to talk about is social media. And yes, the amount of content that you consume on social media is so much for the brain to handle. And it affects your creativity because the amount of time that your brain would have otherwise spent generating new ideas for you is spent processing all this information that you keep overloading it with. The first thing I noticed when I started more consciously cutting my social media presence was just how much more quiet it was in my head. There was no constant background noise of trending sounds or trends or that funny video I saw. All I had was just all this room to take in the world around me and to fully experience and be present in it. The funny thing I realized is that this is actually not very good news to most people because people want to escape life rather than being present in it. Once you cultivate that kind of peace and quiet in your head, there's really no going back. It's a kind of room that allows you to cultivate the ability to think higher thoughts and to focus on the ideas that truly matter to you, instead of allowing them to float away in the turbulence of all the chaos that is constantly going through your mind. Secondly, your brain is always seeking novelty, right? It just can't stand boredom. So when you take away that easy, quick access to all those exciting sounds and colors and images, and you leave your brain to its own devices, then you leave the brain no choice but to be more creative in order to generate some sort of excitement for itself. I remember for me personally, it was always the days that there was a blackout or I just couldn't reach my phone for some reason that I would always take on some random DIY carton box project, which in all honesty never really went well. Screen time aside, however, I think it's also very important to monitor the kind of content that you consume in relation to the kind of sector that you're trying to be more creative in. Let me explain. For example, I'm a creative writer and I love reading nonfiction, self-development books. The language used in most nonfiction books is very rigid, very argumentative, and very straight to the point, as opposed to the otherwise romantic, colorful, and descriptive language of creative writing or fiction. There was a period of my time where I consumed a lot of nonfiction, book to book, back to back, and I realized that whenever I did that, I had a hard time writing creatively when I sat down to do so. I had sort of taken on this straight nonfiction, rigid style of writing in my head, and it was very hard for me to try and regain my natural creative writing style. So what I did to combat that is I decided to add more fiction into my reading. Consuming fiction allows you to think more abstractly and to see in a more beautiful way. So I started incorporating more fiction into my consumption, and it helps me get back that creative touch into my writing. If you're struggling with your creativity or in some sort of creative block, I feel like that really could help. Spending more time focusing on the field that you want to grow in and seeing how others are being creative in that area can ignite your creative spark. It also goes the other way as well. If you're trying to apply yourself more creatively in your line of work and you're reading or consuming stuff that's not necessarily constructive to it, I'd advise to switch up that consumption and start learning more in that sector that you're trying to be more creative in. Because the more information that you have within that sector, the more you have to work with, the more your brain has to work with in relation to generating creative ideas for you. Making sure to always introduce yourself to new concepts, ideas, and experiences also adds to creating that bank of information that your brain can then combine or put together to generate new creative ideas for you. Which actually leads us to the next part of your environment. Let's talk about your physical environment. Your physical environment refers to what tangibly and physically surrounds you. So that's your room right now where you're watching this from. That's everything that's constantly around you and the physical spaces in which you exist. We know that a creative idea is what happens when two or more concepts that have never been put together before are put together. In order to increase the amount of creative ideas that we have and the likelihood that we're going to receive those ideas is to make sure that we introduce ourselves to as many new concepts and experiences as possible. And so I would say that the best physical environment for your creativity is ultimately outside. We are constantly inspired by what we see and what we experience. And because of that, we need to constantly expose ourselves to new environments, new cultures, new lifestyles, new mindsets, and ways of thinking in general. Make the strange familiar and make the familiar strange. What this means is to make sure that at any given time, you're not so used to the confines of your everyday environment that you forget to start taking in the small details of it. Make sure that you're constantly breaking out of your everyday routines and reality. Make sure that you're switching things up constantly. And it doesn't even have to be anything fancy. Taking a bus ride to a new city, going on a walk down a route that you've never gone down before where you live, and practice paying attention to every little detail so that you can bank on all those concepts and all that information and allow your brain time to slowly connect those ideas in the background, and I promise it will eventually resurface as a creative hunch for you to work with. You do this enough times, you even learn new ways to see the world around you that you might have gotten too used to notice. Like after a gloomy week, when you look out and it's sunny outside and you wonder if the sky has always been so blue, or if you just got so used to it that you stopped paying attention. Or seeing your best friend after 6 months and wondering if they've grown taller or are they just more confident. Speaking of friends and confidence, let's talk about the final aspect of your environment, and that is your social environment. What the social environment means to me essentially is the kind of mindsets that surround you and that you consciously or unconsciously allow to influence you. I think the social environment is either where your creativity will be most stifled or most cultivated. Whether we like it or not, the mindsets that we surround ourselves with ultimately influence our own. If you're surrounded by people who are confident, people who have a growth mindset, people who think big, people who are curious, and people who most importantly believe in you, then ultimately you will have these qualities yourself. Whereas if you surround yourself with people who doubt you, people who play small with their own creative ideas, people who say it won't work before they even try, then guess what will happen to you? I think the best thing that I ever did for my creative growth is to surround myself with people who take their own very seriously. People who, when you tell them that you're going to do something and you know it sounds a little out of the box, they ask you, how are you going to do it? Because let's be honest, a lot of creative ideas, when you first think of them, don't really sound sane. Most creative ideas are out of the box,
and that's the point. That's what makes them creative.
If you're surrounded by negative Nancy's and people who constantly shoot you down or shoot themselves down even before they even try their own ideas or give them the chance to see the light of day, then you might be consciously sabotaging your own creativity, because you really do need that room to try and maybe fail, maybe succeed, maybe learn something along the way that will ultimately contribute to the other ideas that you will have in the future. It's so important to have that sort of mindset and to cultivate it within yourself and within the people around you, to be more open-minded and approaching things with curiosity as opposed to trying to assume how everything will go down before even trying. The best thing about cultivating an impeccable social environment in the current world, though, is that it doesn't even have to be in your real life. The internet allows you to join communities and connect with people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to connect with. For example, I have an art club, and I haven't even met most of the people in that group, but they've all been such a wonderful part of my creative growth, because whenever I share my work on there, everyone cheers me on. It's such a supportive, lovely space, and it makes sure that I personally stay accountable with my creative goals, and most importantly, that I feel like they matter or they're important enough to be shared with people out there. Taking some time to Google people who excel in that field that you're trying to grow in as well is also so important. Just seeing their own dedication, the amount of time that they've put into growing their own craft, it does something to you. It makes you feel like your skill matters. These are the kind of people whose cups are so full that they can't help but spill into yours. You want to surround yourself with as many of them as possible. I'd also like to say that spending time alone is really important, because it allows you to drain other people's voice from your head and just listen to your own. Because it's so easy to be influenced by the people that we watch and the content that we consume and the mindsets of those around us. And we can often be biased to believe that other people are more right than we are. But that's a form of self-sabotage, because when you think about it, everyone is kind of sort of just winging it and dismissing your own ideas and your own beliefs for them. It deprives the world of your specific creative voice. I think it's very important that you spend time alone, because it will really help you find your own individual voice and expression and how you want to approach things. It makes all the difference in how authentic and confident you feel when you eventually put out your work. I hope this video helped you become more creative or just more conscious of what is around you and how it influences your creative growth. Comment down below which part of the video resonated with you most, and I'll be sure to add more of that in future videos. Also, let me know any part that you would like me to delve further into. I'd be more than glad to. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great week ahead. Bye!